Have you ever heard of German Impressionism? If not, you're not alone. I didn't know anything about German Impressionism either until I bought this oil-on-canvas painting and did some research on the artist before I offered it for sale in our gallery. The painter's name is William Clusmann, who was born in 1859. That was only 4 years before Manet painted Luncheon on the Grass, the painting that most art historians believe launched the modernist era in Western art. Klausman died in 1927, which means he was actively painting during the golden era of the second generation of Impressionists. And it is clear in his most celebrated work, a painting that sold at Christie's in 2004 for $50,000, he clearly embraced the American Impressionist style, a style that is perhaps best expressed by the most well-recognized American Impressionist of all, Charles Hasson. As you can see in this painting by Charles Hasson, which, by the way, sold at Christie's in 1998 for almost $8 million, the subject and style of these two paintings is very similar. However, if you're familiar with Charles Hasson, you know he was generally considered a student of French Impressionism. So where does German Impressionism enter into the comparison of these two American Impressionist painters? Well, unlike other gifted American painters of his era, Klausman did not go to Paris to study his craft. His earliest mentors did in fact encourage him to go abroad, but he ended up in Munich, not Paris, in the summer of 1879. There he studied at the Royal Academy of Munich under a Hungarian academic painter, who subsequently became the Royal Court Painter of Austria. After 4 years in Munich, Klausman went to Stuttgart, where he studied for a time with Friedrich Keller. His studies were interrupted, however, by the death of his brother, which brought the artist back to Chicago in 1884. It was during that time that he painted his most celebrated works, demonstrating that he was now a full-fledged Impressionist painter. But the story of this painting does not end here. Klausman journeyed to Germany again in 1914, and he was still there in 1917 when America declared war. He was allowed to leave, but he was compelled to leave behind over 200 paintings that he had finished over his 3 years in Germany. Sadly, he was never able to recover these paintings. Can you imagine that? Now, based on the relative age of the canvas on the open back of this painting, and also the patina of what I believe is the original frame, this painting was likely executed in the 1920s, possibly from memory. Or perhaps it's a redo of a painting that he was forced to leave behind in 1917 and was never able to recover, that he completed during his revisit to Germany in the 1920s after the war. One other interesting thing I noticed about this painting is the slightest of transitions from German-inspired Impressionism to German Expressionism, the latter being a modernist school that emerged in Germany before World War I, but totally thrived and captured the art world's admiration during the interwar years. As you can see, this painting retains its roots in Impressionism because of its natural style and palette. And note how the very simplified impression of the face of the fisherman's wife is almost identical to the Impressionist technique used by the master of French Impressionism in one of his most iconic and most revered French Impressionist paintings of all time, Monet's Woman with a Parasol. But unlike the more romanticized subjects portrayed by Monet and most American Impressionists, this painting does not exude a romanticized portrayal of this genre subject, which is titled Fisherman's Start. Instead, it conveys a more subjective perspective about the typical start of a day for this lowly fisherman, because to me the body language of the two main figures in this painting evokes a sense of angst or concern about the challenges this fisherman is facing as he sets out for a long day of grinding work in his tiny fishing boat. Will he get skunked and come home empty-handed? Or perhaps much worse, like so many other fishermen throughout history, could he get caught in an unexpected storm and never make it home? These questions are examples of the moods or ideas that expressionist artists sought to convey by capturing the emotional experience of their subjects, not simply prettified portrayals of physical reality that are very common with classic Impressionism. In any event, without regard to where this painting falls in the spectrum from Impressionism to Expressionism, I hope you can appreciate not only the artistry of William Clusmann, but you now know something about the probable influence of German Impressionism on at least one notable American artist. Lastly, as is the case for all artworks offered for sale by Wesley Barrett Fine Arts, this historic original painting is offered at a price almost all who appreciate fine art can afford. So if you're interested, please take a closer look.